Hello, and thank you for listening to Technology Simplified, tech talk that everyone can understand by IT Voice. I'm your host, Will Slappy, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Derek Wyatt. Derek is a 30-year veteran in the IT field and has run a successful business in Tuscaloosa since 1994. Over the years, he has seen it all. This experience has led him to be a fervent supporter of online backup, and I've invited him to the show today to discuss the importance of having a system in place to secure one of the most important aspects of your business, your data. Welcome to the show, Derek.
Thank you, Will. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Let's start with the basics here. What is online backup and how does it work?
Online backup is when you take a client, a secured encrypted client, and you load it on the machine, whether it be a server, laptop, or workstation, and you select the files you want to back up, and it uploads those files to the cloud encrypted so that you can keep multiple copies and restore all our file level restores when you need the files if you need to do a recovery.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. So in your assessment, and you've been doing this for a long time, who would you say needs a backup service in place?
Really and truly, everyone needs one. The cost is it's really inexpensive to do it and to protect the data. The grandparents, parents, students, business owners, employees, we all need to back up our data because it's too hard to try to recover it when you don't have it. So.
Right. So let's talk about the different kinds of backups that people use. There's a lot of, people who just back up, you mentioned, students, grandparents, everybody. So, what are the different types of backups that people might use? And, I know some people would plug in a thumb drive. What's the different types and how do you know if you have enough?
I can give them all to you going from the very almost beginning. CDs, DVRs, SD cards, tape drives, USB drives, external hard drives, NAS drives, cloud storage, SAS, and also DRAS appliances.
Right. So for a business that's looking at backing stuff up, obviously we could dive into all those stuff, but specifically for our target clients here, businesses. So what are the main types of backups that you see that are being used, in the field, and what's the pros and cons to them?
Well, the first one would be just the file level backups for customers who have file shares, SQL databases, QuickBooks, and just normal documents, Excel sheets. They can do a file level backup to the cloud. Customers who have servers, they may want a more stronger backup where they have an appliance where when they back up on an appliance and they have a virtual server or a local server, they actually can boot that server up off that appliance if their server crashes. So that's a lot more effective backup, and it's within a matter of minutes you can spin up your server off of that appliance.
Right. Yeah. So a hybrid scenario could be a great option for many people where you have a local backup that's replicating to the cloud. And now you've got kind of the best of both worlds, if you will. You've got something off-site for a disaster type of recovery scenario, and then you've also got on-site when it's maybe a hardware failure or something. So, talk a little bit more about that.
Well, as far as when you're backing up data, it's certain ways you want to back up. Do you want to back up how many different revisions of an Excel file do you want? How many copies of a file? So when we set up a backup for someone, we need to find out what they're backing up. How often does it change? Do they want 2 weeks of retention of a SQL database, 4 weeks of a database retention? It just depends on what they're backing up and at what rate rate.
Right. So what do you see most customers do? I mean, are customers leaning towards 2 weeks, 10 years? I mean, what do you see that's adequate for most customers?
Most SQL databases and Exchange databases, it's anywhere from a month to 6 months. But as far as regular file level backups, with these offsite backups and these cloud backups that we use, you can have unlimited archive of all of your revisions of your data with the offsite backups.
Right, right. So when we talk about disaster recovery, what are what are the different types of disasters that you've seen customers go through, and how did the backup, play in helping them through that disaster?
Well, I mean, you've got machines that have been equipment that's been stolen out of an office. You got pipes that burst where they've been in a lower room on the floor. You have a fire, tornadoes. Sometimes you can recover the data. Sometimes if that machine is gone, all you have is the actual backup that you had. And if you've got a full level image backup, you can restore that server onto another server and be up and running in no time. But if you just did a file level backup, you've got to reload the server, set up all your workstations, set up all your security, and the time frame that it takes to come from that disaster is a lot more time. And the other thing with disaster recovery, a lot of companies they don't really look at what level of a disaster recovery it is. It's more than just your data. You need to have a team put together, who to call, where's your contacts, who is your accountant, your all the different information you have to get your business back going. Because if you don't have your data, you got to start from scratch.
Right, right. Now, Derek, I know you're down there in Tuscaloosa, and I think it was maybe 2011 that there was like 77 tornadoes that hit that part of the state, and so you've seen this. You've seen a real disaster firsthand.
Yes.
So let's say that the worst happens, like that it has happened in your city before. What are the risks and maybe even some real stories that you have? If a company doesn't have a backup in place.
Well, if they don't have a backup, like what do you want to make? Like say, what kind of business you want to use as an example? Give me a business.
If you have a business that that didn't have a backup, you could use them. But pick. What's a common type of company there in Tuscaloosa?
Accounting. Just say an accounting office. So in an accounting office, if they don't have a backup, they've got all the tax returns of all the years of tax returns they did for their customers. They got all the current paperwork, all their filings that they do. They would have to contact each customer to find out if they had copies. That would become a very tough, very expensive solution to try to recover from not having a backup. Whereas if they had a image, they could just boot an image up to a new box and they could be up and working remote in the cloud. We could restore a full backup to a device there on site and get them back up and going. Whereas if no backup, I mean, there's really nowhere to start but from the beginning.
Right, right. Yes, you lose all that data for your entire business, yes. Especially in the case of like tornadoes, as you guys have seen there, where there was, buildings completely leveled. So, yeah. On the reverse side of that, there's some people that might say, well, this is my data. It's important to me. It's proprietary, all that. I'm concerned with putting it out there in the cloud, because it might be breached that way. So, if somebody's concerned about the security level of the cloud, what would you tell them?
There's use the 250. They use the AES 256 encryption. Yes. Got it.
That sounds like a lot of encryption.
It is a lot. Yes.
What are some things that somebody should, so let's just say somebody sitting here, they're like, okay, yep, they all in, definitely need a backup in place. And, hopefully most of our listeners would feel that way. What are some things that they should consider when choosing what's the right backup? Because obviously there's a lot of different, you've even mentioned some today, the different various types of backups to be done. Right. So what are some things people should consider and the pros and cons?
Well, when you back up, the number one thing that I've seen over the years, people back up to a thumb drive or they back up to an external hard drive, or even people who back up to tapes, when they take them out, they either leave them laying on the machine where they're backing it up from, which if something catastrophe happened, the backup's gone too, or they never swap it out and it writes over and over again. So that's really not going to work. So when you're going to do a backup, you need to decide, one, is it going to be something that you're going to have someone manually do every day, be responsible for swapping out the tape or swapping out the cartridge? If it's someone backing up to a thumb drive, they've got to keep that thumb drive somewhere safe. The external hard drive's got to be kept somewhere safe. You've got to get it out and back up. You can't just leave it connected to all your equipment every day if it's sitting in the same place where your equipment is. If you want something automated, the cloud, the nice thing about the cloud backups is it will schedule a backup. It will email you the status, the success if it's failed or passed. It'll tell you everything about it, and you just get an email and it's automated. You don't really have to worry about it unless it gives you an error. On some of the other devices, the appliances and all, they back up automatically. You don't have to swap anything, and they also send you a status email at the end of every job. So it really, some people try to put in a system that's less expensive, that takes more user intervention. But the problem with the user intervention, a lot of times people get busy, they go on vacation, tapes don't get swapped out, devices don't get stored correctly. And then when something happens, it's kind of, you don't find out about it until, you never know you're not backing up until you need it. And then, that's kind of one of those, you don't really know you need it till you need it. And when you need it, you really need it. And that's just kind of the way it is with backups. Right.
So following up on that question, and I think that's a great point. I mean, most people don't think about backups, right? Nobody thinks about the spare car on the spare tire on their car until all of a sudden, they have a flat, and then they're like, I wonder if this is aired up, or if I even have one, and now you're looking. So I think that's a great example there. Is there any advantages to the cloud backup in terms of like knowing that I really have a backup and knowing that it actually is going to work?
Yes, we time and time again, you set the schedule when you want it to back up. It backs up. It sends you an email. You get confirmation of it at any time. You can go in and look at it. You've got access to all your files. You can verify a file. You can restore down to a whole folder. You can restore just one particular file you need. If it's a Word document, an Excel document, you can pretty much back up and restore one little file, or you can restore all of your files from the cloud backups. Yes.
Right. Yeah, sounds like a pretty good system. Well, Derek, hey, I'd really like to thank you for joining us today and all your insights. I know you've been doing this a long time. And to our listeners, thank you all for listening. Please subscribe to Technology Simplified, Tech Talk everyone can understand, to hear straightforward, jargon-free answers to your business IT questions. You can also check out our website to learn more. A link can be found in the show notes. Keep an eye out for our next episode where we will discuss the ABCs of Office 365. Thank you, everyone.